Welcome to CPDC orientation. I'm Penny Mansell and I'm the director here at the center, and we are so glad you're joining us this semester. This orientation is mandatory by licensure. It's also mandatory even for observations that students may be doing. It's mandatory for any student workers. It's also mandatory for any benefited staff. In essence, this is mandatory for anyone who's coming into the center this semester. So let's get started. So who exactly are we? I'm always excited to talk about this. You may call us a school, you may call us a child care center, but you may not, under any circumstance, call us a daycare. We are not a daycare. We are so much more than that. We are a campus laboratory school or preschool. We actually began and started in 1929, which makes us the oldest in the state of Mississippi and also one of the oldest in the Southeast. We're super proud of that fact. And when you've been in here a little while and you see what we do and see our quality, you'll understand why. All of our teachers here are highly qualified with bachelor's degrees or higher in early childhood education or elementary ed. We complete lesson plans and follow state curriculum and follow guidelines and all those things, just like a preschool program or a pre-K program in a public school would do. The main difference is because we are a lab school, we have the freedom to do more developmentally appropriate things. We are firm believers in play-based philosophy, and you're going to see that and find that here. So let's get started. So some of these things have changed this year. That's why we're redoing orientation. For anyone, visitor, volunteer, lab student, staff, it doesn't matter. Licensure has changed their policy so that we must now have a 121 form and application on anyone before they start. That includes volunteers, visitors, and anyone that comes into the center. Just so everyone knows that you may not take any photos or videos of any of our children. If you need some documentation for research-based purposes, all that must come through me. You may not do that on your own. We must be discreet and operate with discretion here. We don't talk about the kids or our families or any of their business anytime outside the center. The biggest thing that we want to say, please jump in if you see a need. If you see a teacher that needs help, if you see a student that needs help, no matter what, jump in. We need you and we need help. That doesn't matter if you're a volunteer, if you're a student worker, or if you're regular staff. Jump in if you see a need. One of the things I want to recognize is to make sure you watch your beverages and food items. We follow several protocols. One of them is, of course, licensure. Another one is a USDA food program. One of the big things that they preach is that you must eat your meals with students in the classroom and you can't bring in outside food. If you stop by Starbucks, make sure you pour it into some kind of closed container like this so that the kids don't know what you're drinking. Keep items out of reach. That goes for your bags, your purses, your phones. All of it should be out of the reach of children. You must sign into the volunteer log or timesheets and keep a tally of all the hours and information. We have to keep the schedule and routine in the classroom. That is the biggest thing for classroom management. So before any adults come into the room, make sure you're reaching out to the teacher to figure out what time is best so that they know and can tell you what would be best for you to come in. Again, we've mentioned this orientation is mandatory by licensure bodies. So you have to view this and document that you have in fact seen all this information. So first things first, how do you get into the building? And some of this might seem basic for those who've been here a while, but for students or orientation or for observations, you're going to need this. We have two main doors on both ends of the building, education building floor, as well as the loop that faces faculty and staff apartments over on this end. We prefer that if you are working in this building and you're coming on a regular schedule, get your ID activated for our doors and for the playground during business hours. If you are a student here just for observation, of course, we will let you in, just buzz the doorbell in that way. But if you're working a regular schedule at CPDC, it is up to you to go by the police station on campus and get your ID activated. Staff GroupMe is mandatory for all of us that are here working in CPDC, not for observations, but just working. This is how we contact each other. There is Staff GroupMe on the iPads in the classroom. It's also on your phone. This is how we operate. Mask and health checks are currently required. Everyone is also assigned classrooms right now due to COVID. That way we can keep and document the spread and the transmissions. We have a zero tolerance for cell phones, earbuds, Apple Watches, any of those kind of things going on in the classroom. The kids are our top priority. If you are on your phone, you are not supervising children. If you are talking to somebody in your ear, you are not supervising children. If you are looking down at who's texting you on your Apple Watch, you are not supervising children. Again, all those things are prohibited in this environment. Name tags are required at all times. And if you don't have one available, we will get one printed for you. We also encourage you to put your ID card in the back. That way you can get in and out of buildings. For benefited staff with keys, your keys are required to be on you at all times because that is part of our emergency preparedness plan. There are multiple requirements for volunteers, student staff, and leads throughout the building. Please make sure that you understand what is expected of you, and if in doubt, ask questions. Dress code. Covered is my most important thing. We want you to be comfortable. We want you to be presentable, but you got to be able to get up and down off the floor. You don't need to have your midriff and things hanging out. You need to make sure that this is a business professional environment, and you've got to be presentable at all times. If you're going to wear dresses, which I do a lot, just make sure you put leggings on underneath because kids are going to be all up in your business. That's just part of the environment here. Also make sure that whatever you wear into the center, we use a lot of bleach. We use a lot of cleaning solutions and things like that when kids aren't around. So make sure that if you're going to get bleach on something, it's going to be okay. One of the most important things that everyone needs to understand are some basic health trainings. Hand washing is the #1 thing that we do here on a regular basis all day long. Kids coming into the classroom, hands should be washed. Walking out of the classroom, hands should be washed. You play with Play-Doh, hands should be washed. You're at a rice table or you're at any kind of water play, hands should immediately be washed afterwards. That, of course, goes as saying when you go to the playground, come back in, hands should be washed. When you are getting ready for a meal or after a meal, hands and faces should be washed. Those are non-negotiable items that we need to make sure we're washing hands. Diapers and potty in for children should happen a minimum of every 2 hours. Those schedules are already set. Just make sure you watch the schedules that are in the classrooms. Please, please, please help your lead teachers with this. If they ask you to do something with that, make sure you're obliging and being kind. When it comes to potty training, we have a lot of kids that are in the middle of training. For us, it should mean that they're able to wipe themselves, but truthfully, that is developed by the end of age 3, going into 4 into the preschool class or the pre-kindergarten classroom. So any children younger than that are probably going to need a little help wiping with certain bowel movements and things. So please make sure you have the children in your classrooms trained on when to tell you they need help and when they need assistance. We're going to go over some other indoor-outdoor safety. Some of it should be fairly basic. Being careful not to run in the classroom. We use walking feet. Being careful when we transition. Outdoor safety depends on the group of kids. If you've got a group that can handle going up the slide, not opposed to that. A little bit of risky play is not bad. But if you've got kids that aren't stable enough under the pre-kindergarten age, they probably don't need to be doing that. So these are some discussions and things that we need to have and you need to have with your lead teacher, because if their class is only allowed to go down the slide, then that's what we need to be doing in the afternoon. If they're not allowed to climb the fence, and none of them should be, we're not allowed to do that. If they shouldn't be jumping off of tables and climbing on tables, no one needs to do that inside or outside. Handling and storage of hazardous materials. We don't have a ton of that here. Of course, we have our vomit and things like that. Those materials are kept down in the closet coming in the main entrance. Those are all there in the event we need something in our classrooms. We have different ratios if we are going on an on-campus walk. Those ratios go up tremendously, almost 1 adult to every 3 to 4 children for us to leave the center. We do not transport them at any time whatsoever by any vehicle or anything without permission. And if you leave this building with any of my children outside of being on the playgrounds, then I have to know about it and it must be documented. SIDS prevention and shaken baby. Thank goodness by this age, we start at age 1. Most of our children are not in that young infant group, but of course, shaken baby would be a concern. that we need to watch and be careful of. And all of our leads should go through training on that, as well as our student workers. Preventing and managing infectious diseases. We have to be very diligent in our hand washing and cleaning. And if at any time we start to see spread of anything where, for example, with COVID, we know that we've had this case, and then we see that this child has got this case and they sit in the same pod, and we notice some transmission that way. All those things have to be extremely well documented and reported, both back to families and back to licensure. This goes for you as well. If you get strep throat, I need to know. If you get a stomach bug, I need to know. If you get COVID, I absolutely need to know. We have steps and protocols in place for every bit of this. It doesn't matter if you are here on an observation, or you're here as a volunteer, or you're here as a student worker or benefited staff. If you catch any of these and you've been in my center within 48 hours, we have to know. We also have a good many food allergies in the center. If they have milk allergies, or they have gluten-free tolerances, or they may be vegetarian diets, or we have Muslim friend, it may be we don't have pork. All of those things and all of those needs are posted in the classroom. In saying that, it also goes for photo restrictions. We have friends that aren't allowed to be videoed or documented for news outlets or social media. All of those things are documented, and you need to make yourself aware of where that list is in the classroom. The only people allowed to keep medication would be the director and the director's office. The staff that is allowed to give medication must have had a medication training on that, and there's special ways that it has to be documented and all that. That goes for anything. We do not give children Tylenol, sunscreen, bug spray, any of that without the documented permission forms and things that go with that. Emergency and disaster preparedness. We're a university campus. We have a whole lot of policies and procedures. And for this, I'm very thankful. Things like active shooter that other centers may not have to do. We have designated specific plans on what we do that we practice. Tornadoes, we have designated special plans. Same thing with fire. We practice these regularly. We're required by licensure to practice at least one of the plans monthly, which we do. And so it could very well happen that during your time here, we will have some kind of preparedness drill. So please be prepared for that. The emergency and disaster plans are posted on the back of every door. Again, this is also why lead teachers should have their badges and keys on them at all times, because they are an important part of these preparedness plans. Our main job, number one, above anything else, is to keep these kids and babies safe. That's what their parents expect when they come here, and that's our number one job. Secondary to that is to have fun and play. We often talk that this is the only place that you're going to get to come and play ball and tic-tac-toe all day, or play with chalk and bubbles and just have fun. Come get your stress relief out with some Play-Doh while you're having conversations. These make our job a lot of fun. If you're not having fun in a classroom, you're doing something wrong. Something else I want to speak on is that if you see something that's making you uncomfortable, whether it's a child's behavior that you've identified or it's an adult behavior, speak up no matter what it is. If it's making you uncomfortable, or you think, wow, if we transition to the playground and we did this differently, this might work better. Speak up and let's try it. Some of our greatest ideas over the years have come from student workers or student volunteers who see something we don't see. Main job of any type of student worker is going to be, please help keep the classroom clean, organized, and be respectful of everything that the teacher has. That means that if a kid's completing a puzzle, make sure they complete that puzzle before they put it on the shelf. If they're playing with Play-Doh, make sure they're putting it back up the way it should go, and then help them wash their hands. These are things that the teacher shouldn't have to verbalize. Some of this is common sense, and some of it's just things we should be helpful in the classroom with. Be a shadow of a child with special needs. We have multiple students in our space with very, very difficult and different needs. Some are challenging, some are just language, but they always need an extra hand and extra support. Some of the behaviors that we see can be offset by a student worker taking time to read books one-on-one with the kid to fill their love bucket. Some of it could be that this friend needs someone to sit down and complete an activity with him because they may not have the focus power to do it. All these are things that you can help us with as a student worker, volunteer, or just student here on observation. When speaking of that, make sure we are also working very diligently on supporting our teachers and staff on diaper changes or any personal hygiene support. We talked a little bit about the 2 hours maximum between diaper changes and pottying, but that could also be that they need you to take someone to the restroom or change a diaper in between when they're on the playground or things like that. And if you have a letter of suitability, that means a deep dive background check. We expect you to help in the bathroom and with personal hygiene support. Now, if you are a observation person or a volunteer who have not done a background check, you are not allowed to be alone with children, and you are not allowed to help with personal hygiene in any way, form, or fashion. You must be in the room with another lead teacher at all times. The main job of anyone else that comes in, again, is to just help to keep the schedule and routine in the classroom. These little guys, we talk about it a lot. They've got a lot of emotions and they've got a lot of needs, especially when it comes to classroom management. And we have to help support all the routines that they're used to and accustomed. Any change and difference in routine needs to be talked about. This especially goes for our friends with special needs. We've got some that we show PEX cards. We've got specific songs that we do for transitions. All these things need to stay the same no matter what part we are in the middle of the day. Classroom rules for us are called classroom commitments, and these are the same center-wide in every classroom. These are non-negotiables. Looking eyes, listening ears, helping hands, walking feet, and inside voices. These are our basic rules that we have. Now, of course, teachers have additional ones for things and transitions that they do in their classroom, but these are our main commitments. Also, please think of what you do in the classroom and your behavior. If one of the classroom rules is that students should sit in chairs, then grown-ups need to sit in chairs or on the floor just like the children. You may not sit on bookcases or tables or any of that. Find yourself a chair and sit in the chair or sit on the floor. Please get off the bookcases. This is our basic code of conduct that's in our handbook. Adults in child care should maintain realistic expectations. That means that we should be astute and understand early childhood development and be able to know if what we're asking of that child is on their level. And that could vary depending on their developmental stage. That could vary depending on their age. There could be lots of different things going on with that, but whatever we do, it needs to be a realistic expectation. We need to provide clear and simple limits. We need to be preventative of practices. So if we see that we're playing something in the classroom and it's a dinosaur stomp game and all of a sudden it's getting out of hand because they're starting to run instead of just stomp in place, we need to cut it off and figure out something else. We need to model appropriate behaviors. Same thing with sitting on the table. We need to provide positive redirection. We're going to talk some more about this. If a child is into an activity and these friends are not working so well together, we as the adults need to be able to come and give them the words and give them conversations on how to navigate through this. If we can't, then we need to say, okay, John David, let's go over here and play with Play-Doh with me. Or, okay, Carla Sue, let's go outside and blow some bubbles for a little while. We need a break from our friends. That goes into replacement skills too. So if John David is not getting along with a friend, with his sister, let's say, because his sister took a pen that he wanted, we need to say, oh, John David, it'll be okay. Let's go over here and look at the marker bucket and see if we can find something else that's a beautiful color. There are ways that you can word things and teach them how to settle down and calm and find that replacement skill and make them think more in the future. That goes straight into conflict resolution and problem solving. A lot of what we do at this stage is teaching and instilling in them problem solving techniques. They've got a problem with a friend. They need to learn how to talk through it. They need to learn not to pitch a fit. They need to learn to find their words. All these things are important at this age. We need to provide logical and natural consequences. Sometimes the natural consequence, if you are pitching a fit in the bathroom, You may not get to go outside and play right then because we've got to get calmed before we go, or you might miss going outside. There are a lot of logical consequences that can happen for some of these actions. We also have learned, especially, it seems like it's happened more and more because of COVID. We have a lot of children that sometimes need to be removed from the classroom until we can get them calm. Sometimes, depending on the outburst, we might remove the whole class, and sometimes we remove the child. It really depends on the situation. It depends on the individual. A lot of times, if they're in that fight, flight mode, there is no talking to them in that moment. We can, try to calm and try to get them to breathe and all those things, but we have to be ready to do what's in the best interest of the whole group at that time. And that's a hard situation to be in. So we're going to go into some basic rules for some different spaces around the center. The playground in particular, number one, every day, make sure kids go to the bathroom before they go outside. We do not have enough depth for there to be a ton of kids on the playground and then that's the only person you've got to run them in and out to go potty. They need to get themselves in order and go before they go outside. Now, as they're learning to train and they're really young, especially in some of the training classrooms, like in the 2s and even the young 3s, that's different. When they're learning their bowel movements and bladder control and all those things, definitely they're more go on demand. But as they learn those systems, by the time they're in pre-kindergarten, they should be able to go as a routine and a schedule. Of course, on the playground, our number one priority is keep the children safe. We are mandated by law to go outside 2 hours a day. For us, it doesn't matter how cold it is. It doesn't matter how hot it is. We're going to go outside. Those segments of time may be broken down into smaller pieces so that we can warm up or cool off or drink more water, but we are going to go outside. Kids need it. We need it. The fresh air is good for them. The biggest thing is to have fun and play. The number one complaint I get from parents is that children are playing on the playground and they're all spaced out. And then I've got all these bodies over here sitting on this bench and sitting on this step and sitting on these steps. Your job on that playground is to get up and play with children. You should not be sitting down. There should be someone stationed behind the slide, someone on this end, and we should be all moving all around the playground. Having behavior problems, which is going to happen, what can you do? You can add games, play tag, play chase, any other gross motor things. We even at sometimes take academic games and file folder games and things outside to work on the tables with children. Whatever you do, the biggest thing is to put things back. We have had a lot of money spent on outside centers. We had a lovely science center out here and things didn't get put back on a regular basis, so things ended up lost. Kids need to learn before they go inside to clean up their own mess. We operate on a very specific schedule around here. We know when your class should be outdoors, your class should be inside, your class should be transitioning to potty. We know all that. So if you know you're about to go inside at 11 o'clock, then at 10 till, y'all need to be making the rounds on the playground to make sure all these pieces and things are put back up, just like you would in an inside classroom. Especially as we're transitioning and fixing to do a lot of fun and cool things on our playground, we really have got to work on that and putting things back and keeping it as an outside version of center-based play. Another big thing and problem and big red flag in my book. There should never, ever, ever be personal cell phones on that playground. Apple Watches, all those things? No, absolutely not. If we're going to have accidents and we're going to have things happen, it's going to happen on the playground. You need to be watching children at all times. I have no excuse, no reason for this. We have enough bodies around here, especially in the afternoon, that if you need to take a personal cell call or you need to take something or talk to someone or text someone back, you need to go inside and step away from the children before you do so. There is no reason to be checking that on the playground. Every one of our classrooms have iPads to use outside and walkie-talkies. There's no need to have a cell phone outdoors. In other news, our playgrounds are both super exposed to the public. So what are parents going to notice? They're going to notice somebody sitting on the steps staring at a cell phone. They're also going to notice the other person out there playing and running around with the kids while you're doing nothing. We're not having that. This is the easiest thing to do, is just get up, have a good time, and have some fun. All right, so behavior concerns, because this is going to happen, and it happens a lot. It seems like behaviors are a little bit more elevated right now. The biggest thing you can do is treat kids with respect. We should talk to them as if they are the most important little humans on the world, which they are. Kids aren't going to listen to you. They're not going to respect you whatsoever unless you take the time to build the relationship first. Timeout. Timeout is not something we use around here, to be honest. Sometimes it has to be used if a kid needs to regain composure. This is different. Timeout as punishment is not used. Timeout is a way to regain control of the situation, or the child to regain control of their emotions is different. Timeout should only be used if the kid is mature enough to handle. It has to be based on the age. Kids must be at least 3 years old to do it. And there's no children here that should sit longer than 3 minutes or 4 minutes for any time for timeout. You can't say you're going to sit on the steps until your mama gets here. You can't do that. That's not legal. You can say, we're going to go sit for 3 minutes and we're going to go talk about what you did, because you must have been really angry or frustrated to make that happen. Timeout also has to always be in the view of the teacher. You cannot ever exile a child to have them in timeout. No matter what you do, you need to be direct, you need to be consistent, and you need to be firm in that, in what you're doing with the child. What do I do if a kid's out of control? Because it's going to happen. We have some children that are not capable yet of being in control of their emotions. They lack the maturity, they lack the developmental appropriateness of things. They may have some trauma going on in their own lives that have just set them out of control. We've got things we can do. A lot of it is going to start with documentation of the situation, which we're going to talk about here in a few minutes. Document. Make sure you're telling the director, make sure you're telling the lead teacher in the classroom, because we have steps that we take so that we're documenting here among ourselves. We're doing some developmental screeners. Then we start documenting really intensely with the parents and telling the parents what's going on. Then we reach out for help with USM, with the Disability Institute, to try to get some help and support. Then we reach out back again to the parent to say, hey, we've got to have some help and support from early intervention, behavioral plans, all those things. And then if we can't get it under control after all these plans have been implemented, then we've got to start looking at, is this the best place for a child? Because sometimes behaviors are something that the kid can control, but a lot of times, unfortunately, what we see, it's out of the kid's hands. A lot of times when it gets to the point where it's out of control, it's because our environment is just too overstimulating for them. And when we have, 14, 16 kids in a classroom, center-based, full-on play all day long, they don't have the time or the space to be able to calm. So it could be that. It could be that dad's been out of town and we've had a death in the family, and all these things feed right into that too. The biggest thing that we all know, and we all should know, we can never, ever, ever threaten or lay a hand on the child. We'll go over this again in a second, but that even means threatening. You can't say, get yourself together, your daddy's coming up here to pop that butt. You can't tell a kid that. That is not allowed by licensure. Even if you get frustrated and want to say it, you can't say it. This is a safe place for them and for us. We don't have that here. If you get frustrated, which when you're dealing with some of these really, really strong behaviors and really, really strong emotions, and sometimes really, really strong kids, if you need to step away and go get you some caffeine and some chocolate, do it. If you need to go get ice cream, whatever, there are times that this is stressful and that this is frustrating on us. I would much rather step into that environment for you and let you go get yourself together than for you to take it out on a kid. We can work around that, but it's not it's not worth it. Your self-health matters when it comes to that. Step away. All right, so specific child concerns, because we've talked a little bit about some of these behaviors that we have, but we should keep the children as a group first safe. That's, of course, our top number one goal. If we have a child that is having questionable behaviors, if we've got a child who's a thrower that rakes everything off the shelves, if he or she is one that might throw books or dump out garbage cans or throw chairs, we're going to want to shadow that child. Same thing goes with a biter. If you've got a child that has started biting, then we shadow the biter. We look for the root of the problem and make sure that we have empathy. This is something that we have learned over the years. There is always a reason for the behavior. This is true for babies, children, adults, all the way up. Around here, this age group of kids, we have a lot of parents who go through the divorce and separation at this age. Mom and dad might be finishing up school. Mom and dad, a lot of times in this age, we change jobs, we move houses, we're upgrading or downgrading, depending on what's going on in our family. Sometimes we go through deaths of great grandparents or other people that are close to us. There's always something going on. And the trauma affects children differently and a lot of times really strongly. So we need to work with the classroom teacher, the director, any support personnel. If you are reaching your wits end with a child, make sure you're telling somebody that. Stick with your routines and expectations. We are not an ABA center. We are not trained in constraint holds or other methods and things like that. The lead teacher who has training is the only person that should be doing any kind of restraint hold whatsoever. And by that, for us, it's more like a bear hug. That means if a kid has reached that fight moment where they are so escalated, they're not coming back down and they've started throwing the chairs and they're about to hurt somebody. If we have to, bear hold that kid and hug them, that needs to be done by director or lead teacher until we can get them out of the space and get them calmed down. That's only if it's a dangerous situation that's progressing. And what we're going to do is remove that child and we're going to let them calm down. We're going to let them flee or run or whatever they need to do, but outside the classroom. We're going to talk them down through that. We're going to help them try to count. We're going to help them try to take deep breaths. We're going to help them. We got pinwheels that we blow. And when this has happened, it happens, unfortunately, a good bit for some of our friends, that we just need to make sure that what we're doing is in the best interest of the child. Again, no constraint hold whatsoever, other than the time it takes to get that child removed from that environment so that no one gets hurt. Always try to redirect or reoccupy. That means for some of our friends, it might be, would you like me to read you a book right now? Would you like to come play Play-Doh with me? Would you like to sit down at the sensory table with me? I'll come play with you. Would you like to walk out back for a little bit and let's blow bubbles for a few minutes? That's our top goal before we get them or before they get into that explosive, progressively dangerous situation. Electronics are not our favorite to use from this, but if it's a child that we've kind of seen some tantrum-like behavior and some dangerous things happening, if we've got some form of documentation from early intervention or something that says, hey, we're going to use this for the time being, or we're going to use this as a reward right now because it's part of our IEP or behavior plan, that needs to go through the lead teacher and director or whoever's working on the plan. We've started doing a lot more of separating the group from the child instead of the child from the group. That prevents us from having to restrain a child or anything like that. So what we do, like if it was in the pre-K4 classroom, let's say, we might move the group out back or the group to the other playground or the hallway while that child is having their moment. A lot of times, some of this is sensory based, and they just need a minute. The sights and the sounds and the things going on in the environment get too overwhelming for them, and so they need an opportunity to calm down. The biggest thing with all this is document. If a child falls and their hands are red and their knees are red, document it. If a child has been hurt by another friend or a friend hurts them, document it. Take photos, make notes. We have incident reports that we complete. They must be detailed enough so that the parent knows exactly what happens. Because if you just tell them they got in an incident or an altercation with a friend and you don't say, well, actually your child hit them first and the friend hit them back. Like, they need to know this is what happened so they understand how to talk to their own child about it. What do our teachers need? We go through this a lot here. Our teachers need their children in their rooms to finish tasks, clean up centers on their own. That even means the ones and twos. They can clean up and put things back. They need us all to stick to classroom rules. They need us to stay engaged with kids. If they're using center-based play, which we all do, that means that a student worker or a student doing observation can come in and say, okay, I'm going to sit down and do the English Language Arts Center with these children today. There's going to be kids that need someone to help keep them engaged. There's always some kind of activities to do that's going to need adult supervision. If in doubt, the biggest thing you can do is engage in conversation. Look up on their word wall and see their vocabulary and add those into some conversations. Ask open-ended questions so they can use that brain power and all these new things they're learning. Whatever you do, just jump in and help and stay calm and just have yourself a good old time. Another thing that the teachers always say. So let's say we're in a classroom and there are 4 to 5. There's a student teacher, there's student worker, there's all these other people in the room. The teacher's trying to do something one-on-one with the child, and every problem in the classroom is coming back to that lead teacher. That teacher keeps getting interrupted and not able to finish this assessment or whatever they're trying to do. You can help with that. Go to those children and say, oh, Miss Beth, or whatever teacher that might be is busy. How can I help you with what you need? Also, triple check that the cleaning and the organization and all those things are getting done throughout the day. They should be done multiple times a day, not just once a day. That's the best way to help a teacher get things done in the classroom. So our discipline policy. These are mandated that we have to tell you. There are prohibited behaviors by anyone. That includes parents on site, staff, caregivers, all of us. We are not allowed to do any corporal punishment or physical punishment whatsoever. Can't handle a child roughly, can't spank, shake, push, shove, pinch, slap, bite, or kick any kid. I would hope no one in this building would ever even have that as a thought. We can't do any form of emotional punishment. We can't reject, terrorize, isolate, ignore, corrupt a child in any way. We can't humiliate them or have threats for physical punishment. I talked about this earlier. This is the policy that says we can't say, Daddy's coming up here to pop your booty. Get yourself together. You're not allowed to say that. We can't have any form of isolation. They can't be in a locked room and towards a closet or separated from staff or group in any way. This means that a kid that's in timeout needs to be beside you as the teacher. They can't be isolated or pushed away to a different part of the room. The discipline, of course, or the timeout, if that's used, must be age appropriate. 3 and up, we don't do it in the 1s and 2s. It has to be in age 3 and up. And it's only for the time it takes to get the room back together, which is max 3 to 4 minutes, depending on the age of the child. We can't have any psychological abuse or coercion in any way. And of course, you cannot withdraw food, rest, playing outside, or toileting in licensure in Mississippi. It is not allowed. So you cannot say that, let's say the child, we were talking about natural consequences. Yes, that child may take them a little bit longer to get outside because they haven't finished the task at hand, but they are still going outside to play. Same thing when they go outside to play. You can't tell a kid, well, you're going to have to sit on the steps, for playtime today. That's not legal. Find you another way. A lot of times we talk about things about the connection and things like that. So instead of it being like a true discipline, what you can do is say, instead of sitting at the steps, why don't you take my hand and let's walk around the playground a couple of times and let's talk about what we could do differently. Let's re-script it. Let's help them get the words of what they need. So let's say that something happened in the classroom or happened on the playground with a friend where they went up and took a toy. Well, as you're walking around the playground, holding their hand and connecting, we're sharing those statements of, okay, so you really hurt John David's feelings when you took that toy away. What do you think we could say next time? Or what hurt your feelings about that? What got you so frustrated? Like, use all those moments of the connection and the calming to build future plans of how they can take care of themselves and how they can take care of the situation as a whole. Continuation of the discipline policy is that no child can be disciplined for toilet training or not sleeping during rest time. No child can discipline other children. Real quick over this rest time, they are not required to sleep. They are required to rest and to lay down on their cot, and whatever that may look like depending on the age. But as long as they're laying peacefully and calm and all that, they cannot be disciplined for not sleeping in any way. No child under any circumstance can discipline any other child. That being said, we are very much a school that believes that everyone should find their voice. Everyone should be able to tell a friend, you hurt my feelings, or I'm disappointed in you, or you didn't share that with me and that really hurt my heart. That's not the same as discipline. This is stating that you can't tell a kid to hit back. You can't tell a kid, well, if he kicks you, kick him back. You can't do any of that. Now you can help them and all find their words, but that's the extent of what we do. Again, we're back to the physically restraining. We say this again because some of the behaviors that we see are so over the top sometimes with the flipping of furniture or other things that may happen. Make sure that there's a lead teacher there to handle this, and that we make sure we understand that just being incompliant is not the reason for this. This is for safety. So if that child is hurling chairs or throwing things that are going to hurt somebody, that's when you remove the other children and then you try to get the situation under control. But that's when you should always step out and get a director, make sure a lead teacher, somebody's there. So some of the biggest things we hear: tone, voice matters. Go back to that. Are you speaking to that child like they are the most important little person on the planet? Because they are. Also, go to the child. Don't yell at the child. If I can hear you yelling across the playground, that tells me you didn't get yourself up off the step to walk over there and talk to that kid like you should have. Same thing in the classroom. Get up, walk to that kid. If it's something really bad, make it even a private moment and step out and talk to them in the hallway. Give them some privacy as they're learning these skills that they need to regulate themselves and sort out their emotions. They've only been on the planet 3, 4, 5 years at this point. They're going to need a little help. We also need to go into mandated reporting. CPDC and everyone in education are mandated reporters. We have a children's policy on campus that if something happens, you go upstairs to Karen Partain in Outreach and Innovation. You're welcome to talk to her. You're welcome to talk to me if you're curious about whether or not this reaches the stipulation or anything for mandated reporting. I am always going to tell you that if you in your heart feel like it should be reported, then you're going to report it. Whether it happens with somebody here and involves one of us or it involves a parent, you're welcome to go talk to Karen Partain. If you feel more comfortable taking somebody a step out, you're welcome to come talk to me. Whatever it is, if you feel like it should be reported, report it and let them follow up with it. So why do we have behavior problems? And I wish we didn't, but we do. Some of the main reasons and things that we can do to help are that our rules aren't clear, they're not followed, they're not reinforced, they're not reminded, and every adult caregiver that comes in and out is not following the same set of rules. Even parents at some point need to get on board with the same set of rules. If we have walking feet in our hallways and classrooms and they have running feet at home, that's not going to help us. We need to work on that. If they're allowed to scream back and shout back in adults in their home environment, but we don't allow that here, we need to get on the page with that. A lot of times we see things with cleaning up because sometimes our parents forget that we got some really capable little humans in this building. And so a lot of times at home, parents, because it's just easier, may clean up for a child or pick up the toys for the child instead of making the child or allowing the child to find those skills himself and do it. So sometimes we have to get on the same page with some of those. We also need to triple check that the expectations are appropriate for the group or for the individual child. Year by year, the needs of that classroom are going to change. Curriculum that we did one semester may not fit that group of kids the next semester. Small groups or circle time or all those things may not consistently fit that group of children, and we have to be willing to ebb and flow with what that group needs. Routines and consistency matters. We have to follow the same routines with the children. That means we're playing, we're eating, we're napping, we're doing group materials and things at the same time, we're pottying at the same time. All those things matter for the routine. Kids thrive on routine. We also need to make sure whatever games and activities and materials that we're using have their attention and they're age appropriate. Sometimes we see major behavior problems, and we talk some about this, about the life disruptions that happen at this age. It happens a lot. So we need to be prepared and have those open lines of communication with our families so that they let us know what's going on. So in case we see some differences or some trauma-informed care type things that come out from those situations. That being said, we talked some about divorce and separation is huge at this age. We see a lot of families and kids that go through attention-seeking behavior because something has changed with the dynamics of how they receive the attention at home. And that causes behavior to outreach at home. It could be that a parent is going on a business trip. It could be that parents are separated. It could be sister just graduated and moved out of the house. All these things are going to lead to what we see in the classroom. And we have to have communication with the families to know what's going on. This one, young children are not made to sit still. If you were trying to have a 30-minute circle time without movement, you are doing it wrong. That is not the kids' fault. Kids are not going to sit. If you're trying to do table work and table activities, you're in the wrong place. That is not this environment whatsoever. Kids need movement. They need to play. They need action. So a lot of times with that, we're going to see impulse and behavior control that just isn't developed yet. And we talk some about this. When it gets to the point that we need help, we need to be prepared to ask for help and not wait, because behaviors are what's going to keep teachers moving and exiting out of the classroom. Behaviors from parents, behaviors from children, behaviors from staff. This is our number one thing that we need to make sure we're addressing with each other as well. So something happened. Now, what do we need to do? The first thing we need to do, no matter what, if there is a over-the-top behavior or an accident or incident that's occurred, you need to go get a director or director designee. We need to make sure that the lead teacher or the director or director designee knows what's going on, and the director or director designee needs to be the one that decides how we follow up, how we notify, and who we notify. So of course, if it left a mark on a child or teacher, we have to tell parents, and that's where the incident and accident reports come in. If medical care is going to be necessary, someone trained in first aid must respond. That is typically the lead teacher, the director designee, or director. We've all been trained in first aid CPR, and we should be on that scene if a child has been injured. An incident accident report must be completed, and it needs to be completed virtually immediately. Of course, the director, whoever needs to go contact parents, however that's going to handle, and then whoever witnessed the incident has got to write up that accident report and incident report to be put in Black Brightwheel, and for the parent to sign when they're on the scene. We post an image of the incident accident report to the family. In saying that, we need to make sure that the parent gets notified in the way that's most beneficial in the situation. If it's something that may come across as a little scary, or there's questions to it, or if child's been hurt, let's say a child needs stitches. Some reason we have a lot of falls and we need a lot of tape and glue on these eyebrows. It happens a lot. Those parents are going to want a phone call to know what's happening and more information about what they were doing before it, what kids were around, were they pushed, did they just trip? We need to have all this information gathered up. It's got to be told, not just the parents, because they want to know what's happening to their baby, but if it's something that's going to have to require further medical care, we have to file a report on ourselves to licensure. We have to report any serious occurrence to them as well. So that goes back into making sure no matter what that family signed in that report that you write out. So we've notified them in Brightwheel, we've notified them via phone, we've posted the pictures in Brightwheel for documentation. We do not send text typically with any of this. It needs to be called from the landline in the office and followed up with the Brightwheel messages and pictures. At this time, if it's been a detailed accident incident, you're going to need to type up a report. Anyone who responded to the accident, anyone who witnessed the accident, all that needs to be documented and typed up, as detailed as possible. Who was there, what children were there, who was on the scene, what were they doing, what were we in the process of doing when this happened. Everything needs to be fully detailed and documented. No matter what, overshare in that point so that everything comes out, and because there may be something that a parent is looking for to calm themselves, maybe something that someone from licensure is looking for to say, okay, they were actively engaged when this happened. This really was truly an accident. And most of the time it absolutely is. But we just need to make sure we are very, very, very detailed in that. This also goes, we've talked about accidents and incidents, but at the same time, there are some children here that if we shared everything they did, would probably not have very many good reports at the end of a week. So when it comes to student workers and what student workers report, they need to make sure we're sharing 3 times as much good as negative. Student workers should really be only sharing the good and save the rough for the classroom lead or for the afternoon lead to share, or to the director. That way the parents, it may be something simple. Oh, we use walking feet in the hall today. That may be a big deal for that kid, and that's okay. But try to have something in your mind that you can share that is something great that child has done. Okay, sick children. We have several of these, and it's going to happen too. If the kid is sick, we check multiple times here before we send home. This policy is outlined all in our handbooks. We need to document those temps in Brightwheel. We do this because there are kids here that are going to wake up from nap and their temp's going to be running high. They're going to come in the door out of that car seat with jackets, which they're not supposed to do, and their temp's going to be too high. So we're going to let them sit up and eat breakfast and drink some milk and get stabilized, and then we're going to check their temp again, and then we're going to check it again. And yeah, we might scan with the temporal thermometer, but anything that we suspect is a temperature, we're going to need to check with a real thermometer under their arm. I would ask your leads for this because they're going to know to do it. We need to make sure that if any of that's going on and we might be sending home for sickness or something like that, are they extra whiny that day? Have they been crying at the drop of a hat? Do they seem disengaged, which is abnormal? We need to make sure we're documenting any of those kind of notes in Brightwheel for parents too. I also put in here just some basics of the things that we do see. Diarrhea is 3 or more episodes unless they're not toilet trained, and that means they're excluded. Vomiting 2 or more times, and I'm going to say unless we have a stomach bug in the center, and if that's the case, 1 time of diarrhea, 1 time of vomit, you out. But make sure with any of this, you always include the director or the director designee before sending a child home. Why is that? Because there are times where someone says, oh, my child has a temperature, and the first thing that parent does is text me. If I don't know anything about it, I'm suddenly having to chase down information. I need to know about it as well. The lead teacher, the director designate, anyone who's involved with that child's care needs to know before you send them home. Classroom responsibilities, important notes. So we have ratios, 8 for the 1s, 9 for the 2s, 14 for the 3s, and 16 for the 4s. In saying with that, these are just the inside classroom ratios per the 1 adult with letter of suitability. Now, if you go out and you're going on a walking field trip, or you're taking the buggies or buses somewhere, your ratios drop tremendously. We need to do 3 to 4 depending on what kids you're taking. And those ratios are in the handbook, but honestly, it depends on your kids. If you've got 4 children with special needs in the 3-year-old classroom, then you're going to need more help than just 2. So it really depends on knowing your children and making sure you're making a good decision before leaving. No matter what we do, count the kids consistently and constantly. Nobody wants to lose a kid between coming inside and outside or going on a walk. That is immediate dismissal, and we're all in massive trouble. Don't lose my babies. Make sure every child has adult eyes at all times. This is hard. We were talking about this weekend. When you think about a group of preschoolers, that's 28 kid eyeballs to 2 teacher eyeballs. And these kids are fast. They're going to do things and they're going to have accidents, and it's hard. Just do your best to make sure that you're constantly scanning the group, that you're constantly walking around the group. If you've got kids that need one-on-one attention, assign someone to those children and then monitor the rest of the group. Those are the kind of things that we need to do to make sure we keep everyone safe. Make sure we watch the nicknames. We sometimes nickname our babies because we've spent so much time with them. But these are kids that are learning things phonetically, including their own name, and they're learning how to write words and things like that. They need to use they need to use real names. Follow rules set by the lead teacher. We've noticed that and set that plenty of times throughout this. The lead teacher is going to have classroom rules and routines and expectations, and it's all our jobs to help, even mine, when I walk through, to make sure whatever I'm doing, if I'm correcting or saying something, that I'm following the lead of the teacher. All the teachers agree, and we've talked about this too, to make sure that the students clean up their centers before moving on. So we also use the same center signs for all our centers, and so most of them are like 2 to 3 children per center. We need to make sure part of our job as we walk through as a student worker is that these 2 children would like to move on, or this one child. Well, that one child needs to put up their activities that they were playing with in the block center, and then they can go choose another center. Something that always comes up is our preschool and pre-kindergarten children, especially second semester children. By the time they're in this point of the year, they can write their name themselves on all their artwork, and they need to do so. We don't need student workers sitting back there helping them with their artwork. We believe in free creative play. We are not going to take their pieces that they've glued down and move it. I don't care what it looks like. If that baby did it, that's how it's going to stay. Same thing goes with their name on something. If they can only write a J and a D, then that's what they're going to write, because that's what they need to be proud of. We talk about this a lot too. Watch the wasted time when it comes to classroom transitions. This is the same thing with bathroom breaks. You are asking for trouble if you were going to go and sit all your children on the rug and have them transition to the bathroom. That's not going to work. That is asking for trouble with behavior management. Have them in small groups or small group tables or something, and you're transitioning a few at a time, or this table at this time, this table at this time. Watch the wasted class time too. So even when you're going down the hall, let's count and stomp. Let's say our letters. If you're lining up to play, lining up to go outside, those are moments. If you're waiting on somebody, well, let's pull out something and let's stand like the letter A, or let's make the letter E with our body. I mean, there's plenty of things we can do to make sure we don't have wasted time. We've said this and we'll say it again. Check with your classroom lead on diapering, taking turns with personal care, making sure their faces are cleaned and wiped, their nose are wiped, washing hands in between all that, and communicate with the lead teacher and other staff. We don't understand or know your needs unless you share them with us. Meal times. We are part of both USDA and licensure. We've talked some about this. We have the 2 bike club, which for us, we do like 1 bike club for the 1s, 2 for the 2s, 3 for the 3s, 4 for the 4s. Some kids can't do that, but it's just an easy and fun way to count too. We try to have all the children try all the items on their plates before they get seconds of anything, because otherwise you're going to have the same kids that will only eat fruit and bread every single day. So no. Let's try a bite of green beans today before we eat that, or before you get more pears, let me see you get try a bite of that broccoli. Now, are we going to push it if they can't do it? No, but most of our kids can try it. We all sit down family style for meals. This is not option. Even if they ate at home with their parent, they're still going to sit down for meals at school. We practice family style with conversation. So if the room is divided up into 5 different tables that they're eating at, they have conversations, and we can even ask open-ended questions for them to start conversations, but they have conversations with their table, just like they're eating family style at home. Adults can eat in the classroom, but you must eat after the children eat, and you can only eat what we feed the children. You can't bring in McDonald's and eat McDonald's. We encourage the children during meal times to have patience. So if you sit down to eat with the kids and all of a sudden Miss Beanie, I need more peaches. All right, baby. Well, I just sit down. Let's try something else on our plate, and then we'll get seconds in a minute. Of course, in saying that, our first priority is going to be feeding our kids. We do have some folks that we will assign to help with snacks and meals in the afternoon. As you can imagine, there's a lot of dishes to wash here, so we are going to need some help and things with that. We've also started something else where adults are not to eat food out of our kitchen. We've been going through snacks and things so quickly that we're changing that. They can only eat with the children during mealtime. Also needs to be said that snack has two components. So if you have milk, that's a component. A milk and graham cracker is all you need. You don't need milk, graham cracker, peanut butter, and fruit, or raisins, or any of that. You need two components. So I think that's some of the reason we need to kind of get back to snack time and what it should be. So we have lead teachers in every room, and they definitely set the tone for the class. They're responsible for the communication of any child, their staff, or their concerns. They're the ones who talk about the concerns to the parents. They have lesson plans that are due to me by the Thursday before the lessons talk the following Monday. So if you're here as a student teacher, that means your lesson plans, the final version for my notebook, is due by Thursday. You should be posting them to the family by Friday. Every day before the lead leaves, if they leave at 2 o'clock, they're supposed to lay out the activities for the afternoon to do. If they leave at 4:30, 4:45, 5, whatever their schedule may be, they're supposed to have the activities ready for tomorrow as well, for the morning. We're supposed to keep the learning and routines with everyone going all the time. Their job is to make sure they're delegating and supervising the student workers and volunteers and student teachers in their classrooms. They are also responsible for updating the families with photos and more. That is something they can absolutely help delegate to the student workers, and we would expect student workers, Jumpstart volunteers, all those folks to help us with that. We have morning director designees and afternoon director designees. While I may be the director, all of our leads can also operate in that director designee sense. Afternoon director designees are going to be required to get out of the classroom and walk around and make sure everything else is going on. Seems like most of our concerns typically happen in the afternoon, and that's when we have a lot of student staff, so it's expected. But we're going to try to make sure we put the afternoon director designees around so that it protects everyone and we are all doing what we're supposed to be doing. Same thing with the leads, just using time wisely. Some of these things are easy, like if they're at nap time or whatever they're doing, you as a student worker or volunteer can absolutely help them so that they have time to work on their plans and do what they need. Technology. It must be part of the lesson plan if we're doing it as part of the lesson. Screens aren't allowed at any time in the 1 or 2-year-old classrooms. Anything that we do has to be educational. Please don't be playing Bernstein Bears or any of those kind of character related shows. We don't do that here. It must be educational, and whatever video you show must be approved by the teacher. You can use it for movement. So if you want to do indoor recess or Dartmouth Learning Station, Cosmic Kids Yoga is fabulous. There's a lot of dance party stuff that the kids love. You're welcome to do some of that as long as it's because, and there's a reason. Let's say you're trying to secure the room or it's a rainy day, or you've got another friend over here that needs a minute to calm down and we're not ready to transition, or we're having a hard time transitioning. You might want to put your other children doing a Cosmic Kids Yoga activity on the rug while you're working with that child one-on-one to get themselves back calm. Brightwell app, we spoke a little about this. We need everyone's help doing that. Checking in and out, updating diapering, photos, all those kind of things can be done. Just check with your lead teacher on that. I'll say it again and again, no phones in rooms. That means that cell phones or otherwise, we don't have wall phones or landlines in the classroom either. Brightwheel, GroupMe, and Walkies are what we use around here for communication. Now, this is a shocker for some of our work study students who grew up in other childcare centers. We are a 0 big fat goose egg worksheet policy at our center. We don't use workbooks or worksheets or coloring books or any of that. We need to figure out how to teach it through play-based activities. That means you're going to pull out the Play-Doh, you're going to pull out the counting bears, you're going to pull out the games. You're going to do it in a fun, play-based way. We are a play-based center. And I found this quote online that talks about if a kid is coming home with photocopied worksheets, coloring book pages, or anything like that, you can rest assured that the teachers haven't studied early childhood development. That is so true. Please keep that in mind. Don't be making ditto copy sheets. Don't be running off things to use. Now, if you're using it in some way that can be used in multiple ways, let's say you're doing a sheet that is going to be, they're putting it in a certain sequencing order. They're going to cut, they're going to glue. They're going to do multiple things to that one activity. That's different. We can make some of that work in the confines of play. But if it's just a worksheet that you're using to do something or color something, that's not okay. We've got better ways to do things. COVID changes. We have had lots of changes for COVID. These are still changing rapidly. Right now, we've assigned students and workers to rooms. It's just easier that way to do contact tracing. Children the same way. We, in the past, like if a kid got overwhelmed with one environment, we might try to move them around to a different environment to see if we could play off some other personalities a little better. Right now, we can't do all that from COVID. The policy had been that if you were vaccinated, current on vaccination, or have had COVID within a 90-day window, you can move more freely. But we're just doing our best to try to keep people separated. Hopefully some of these things will loosen and change as we keep going through the semester. But we still need to be aware of the diligence that has to go in with contact tracing for us. We need to keep these safety parameters in place as much as we can. We're going to go through some quick to-do lists. Of course, y'all can read these, but we have to monitor Brightwheel in the morning. If you're here an early shift for who is dropping off and checking in students, they've got to be checked in and out. There's no excuse not to verify children. We've got to get that done. The same thing for classroom attendance rosters. We've got to do that. We are bound by licensure, by childcare certificates, by USDA food policy. All these programs talk about how we have to keep our attendance records. If you are here in the morning and you don't know what to do, or there's too many bodies in that classroom and you need more help, ask what to do. Make sure all toys and manipulatives are in the proper location. Classroom centers should stay organized. Verify the rules and what the teacher needs you doing. Assist the teacher with documentation and photos in Brightwheel. A lot of times in the morning, the teacher will come in and assign centers. So you might be working at a math station. You might be working at art. You might be working at home living or blocks. What we have to remember is that every one of these stations, every one of these centers has certain learning standards to go with it. So while it may look like in a block center, all we're doing is building. Well, we might be learning this week about force and gravity and castles and angles, and we need an adult to sit over there in that station to lead the conversation and point their direction to the standards that we're actually trying to teach through play. We also have to mix our solution and clean daily. We mix the bleach water every day. We assist meals and messy play. All these things are what we have to do. We have to sweep, wipe, clean everything. Some days we're vacuuming, we take out all the trash. Like there are lots of things that we have to do. There's a hand washing song that your teachers can teach. We wash hands over and over and over religiously around here. So make sure we're washing hands correctly, completely, inside and out, tops and bottoms, in between. that's just multiple importance too. Like you can help a teacher by standing by the hand washing sink and making sure they're getting that done as well thoroughly. Nap time. So we kind of have this broken down into 3 times during the day. There's morning, nap, and evening. Again, during nap time, we're responsible for monitoring Brightwell and verifying meals and verifying naps and all that. Some of these are mandatory by licensure. We don't do the paper today cards. So if it's supposed to be accounted for in Brightwell, we need to be doing that. Nap time, the lead teacher should be able to leave that classroom and get some work done. Student workers should take the lead on making sure kids are napping and covering the room at that time. Cleaning routine should happen then. If your teacher's got different days where different materials, blocks are clean one day, home living's clean another, all that is documented and posted in that classroom. You need to find that schedule and see what you're supposed to be cleaning and doing. Children have to use their personal nap mat. They're not allowed to use the center pillows or stuffies from the classroom. They have to use their own. They're all washed different days of the week, Monday through Thursday. So ask and pay attention to that. Verify the nap time class rules with the teacher. They're going to have different children that need to sleep away from each other because they're going to play, or they're going to have a friend who lays quietly but doesn't nap, or they may have a friend that's a little more disruptive at nap time based on their needs. So we just need to make sure that we're doing whatever we can to support the teacher in that. Once the children are asleep and the room is back tidy, then you may start on your homework or your studies. But the kids need to be asleep first. You need to have padded backs. You need to have done everything humanly possible to get those kids to sleep before you move on to your homework. Because remember, you're being paid if your work study to be here before all else. Afternoon to do. So this is basically when you're thinking about that staff from 2 to 5:30. They're also responsible for monitoring Brightwell for parent pickup and checking the name to face to make sure we're verifying who's picking out the child. If you don't know the pickup person, ask and verify. Check in Brightwell to see if they're listed, if parents gave somebody a special permission. If in doubt, check with the director designee. Do not put this on yourself as a student to figure this out. A lead benefited MUW employee should make the decision if there's any doubt. This is a fear of every director out there. We never want to send a child home with someone who's not supposed to pick them up. Triple check. No one's going to get angry over that. If they do, that's a problem. All right. In addition, check kids' faces, their hands, their noses, all those things, their bottoms, their diapers, all that to make sure they are cleaned up and together and have their things rounded up for when their parents get here. At the end of the day, we need to make sure toys and manipulatives are put back in their proper location. Leave the room better than you found it. We wipe down all chairs, tables, and surfaces with our bleach water solution. You are welcome to have our littles help with using wet wipes or alcohol wipes for surfaces in the classroom. Check with the teacher again for end of day cleaning of materials and manipulatives. Every room has a cleaning center. Make sure the playgrounds are tidy and neat, and make sure one of the leads, either in the one of the twos, they're going to be the afternoon director designee at the end of the day, making sure that we've done all these processes. Final check, we need to set the heat or air for the next morning and verify that all food or garbage diapering is out of the center. We need to check the disinfecting list again. We have an e-mister that we've been using, especially in periods of spread. No children should be present if the room is being misted. We also don't use Lysol for that same reason. Lysol spray is not good to inhale for small children. Same thing with the e-mister. We don't do that with kids around. We need to lock all the back play gates and playgrounds and play yards, turn off all the lights, flush the toilets. By 5:25, if we still have any children here, we need to message or call the parents to make sure they're on their way and somebody didn't get their wires crossed. Because it never fails. Most of our parents are good to pick up by 5:25, but if a kid's not here, they could have been somebody forgot to pick them up. So make sure you call or text and figure out what's going on. We always turn on the semicircle porch lights facing the faculty apartments and lock the main door. All right, important stuff. This is mainly for any staff, but if I'm expecting you here, you need to text me, call me, group me, something, and let me know that you're not coming if it's unexpected. If you know you're going to be out, work with your team to find your replacement, especially if it's a day like Monday mornings. We don't have a ton of help and support on Monday mornings. So if you're supposed to be here based on the schedule, please let us know what's going on. We depend on everyone here. I'm going to say it again, but drinks around kids, make sure you put it in something. It is not fair when you come in with your cookie crumble frappuccino that looks like ice cream and the kids can't have one. Don't do that. Licensure is really strict on that policy. Time cards are on the computer in the library in the CPDC. They are due every Thursday evening. Every 2 weeks, you have to print and sign that. This is your notice of what you need to do. If you need someone to walk you through the steps, grab a student worker that's around and they can help you with that. Make sure for contract tracing purposes, you put whatever classroom that you've worked in so we can keep up with that. Again, we have observation students, we have Jumpstart, we have outside volunteers, we have student teachers, we have student workers, institutional, benefited staff. There could be 30 to 60 people in and out of this place at one time. One person. You don't turn in your card, there's no pay. I'm going to assume, and I have no way of knowing, that you weren't here for Jumpstart volunteer time, that you weren't here for another version of volunteer time, that you're not here trying to get hours for your sorority. I don't know these things. If you want to get paid, you turn in your timesheet. Come in. That's another thing. Yet again, if you're on my list and you're supposed to be here, get yourself an ID card so I don't get constantly interrupted with that. Other must-dos. We've talked about this. There are teachers, caregivers, student workers, and volunteers over 120 hours. Now have to have an application sheet and a 121 immunization form in our binder. Come in. They also, if you're going to be working, if you are a student worker here, then you've got to have a background check with MUW-HR to work with minors, and it's a little more in-depth than the normal one. A fingerprint card, that is for a letter of suitability. Those are done through the Department of Health, and we'll get with you on that. I like to let everybody wait about 30 days on that. You may not be alone with students for any length of time whatsoever without one. But because we paid the $50 for those for our student workers, I like to make sure that this is for you before I get one of those. So you've got to for sure have the MUW background check before you begin. But the letter of suitability, we'll figure out based on what's going on with the state on that, because there's some procedures and policies that are changing. MUW first aid CPR training, that's required within the first 30 days if you're a benefited position. 15 hours of minimum training a year, that's for everybody in early childhood. This 1 hour orientation will count as some of that. Our benefited positions have 30 hours, and all benefited positions must have director designate classes from licensure. Anyone is allowed to take those director designate classes. So if you see yourself going into early childhood in any way, form, or fashion, public health in an early childhood capacity, family studies in early childhood, I'm going to highly recommend you go ahead and take those director designate classes. Again, the big deal. This is a legit job. Keep your cell phones and personal property up at all times. They're not allowed in classrooms or playgrounds. I've said this over and over. Of course, it's because if you're on your phone, you're not supervising my babies. 2, these kids have enough distractions from their own parents. Their parents are working. Their parents might be working from home. They're on their phone, building a career, all these things. When you are here, you are undividedly theirs. Be their person. Let them feel their love bucket based on you. Let them be the number one priority for you and the number one piece of your world. We talk about absences on here. If you're just going to be one work day, let me know a week ahead. If you're going to help with the wedding or you're getting married or whatever, and you can let me know 2 months in advance, that's much appreciated. We are open the majority of the year. We are open with the faculty. We are open with the staff calendar, not with the faculty, meaning that we're only closed technically 15 days of the year. So we're here spring break, we're here summer, we are here all those days. If you plan on taking those days and not being here, I need to know, because it counts as being off. No shows are not tolerated. No shows will mean you don't have a job, and I'll just mark you off the list. We will also not allow you to come back with that behavior. Your teammates and shift mates depend on you for this to run smoothly. A lot of times teachers plan extra activities and things based on who's going to show up when. So we need you to be here. When you decide not to be here, it puts a kink in our system and it's not fair. Now, that being said, we are so glad and love the fact that you're coming to have this work experience with the Child and Parent Development Center. We're excited to see you here. We're excited for you to come and fill up the love buckets of these kids and have some fun in the process. So if you need anything or anything changes, let us know, but make sure that you document that you have watched this orientation on your volunteer and orientation sheet that's going to be available for you when you refill out your workload. But thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.